Tara St Andrews, it's Miss Thomas here with today's pre-recorded session. I am going to continue reading our class novel, Who's Afraid of the Bwgan-Wood? Chapter 11, The Trouble with Iron. Back at Dewin's house, Tatty and Dio poured out the whole story. Gramps, the hospital, Bwgan-Babi, the children, and the locked-up school. Dewin was shocked, but he didn't scold them. The situation was too serious for that. He just shook his head and looked very grave indeed. Iron, he mused. You'll need stronger magic than mine to break that spell. Wood and stone I can mould and move, but iron and plastic and the works of man, never. Tatty shivered, thinking of Bwgan-Babi shut up in that box, hungry, helpless, crying. And what if all that iron changed him in some way, so that he'd never be able to fly or change shape or be a normal Bwgan ever again? What if he got ill and died? Tatty fought down panic. Who else can we ask? Dewin thought deeply. None of us lesser ones, he admitted. Elves, maybe. Bwgan-Wood might be able to do it, but it'd cost you. Dio gulped. We'll just have to try, that's all. She might be in a good mood, you never know, Tatty said hopefully. Bwgan-Wood was not in a good mood. She rarely was. She glowered at Tatty and Dio from beneath her draggled green hair and spat out pondweed. So, baby brother got kidnapped, did he? And who was supposed to be looking after him while Mammy and Daddy were out enjoying themselves, eh? Tell me that. Tatty and Dio hung their heads. Well now, the witch continued, looking very slyly. I've always fancied a nice, dry Bwgan house to live in over the winter. So this is what you'll do. You'll tell your Nino and your Tide that I'm willing to do a swap with them. I'll move into their house and they can come down here and live in my swamp. Tatty and Dio gaped at her, horrified. But that's not fair, Dio protested. The witch shrugged. Suit yourselves, that's the bargain. Take it or leave it. Do you want your baby brother back or not? Tatty was appalled. The thought of Nino and Tide having to leave their lovely Bwgan house and move into Bwgan-Wood's disgusting, smelly swamp made her want to cry. And it was all her fault. Hers and Dio's. Can you really magic iron? She asked desperately. For some reason, this question made Bwgan-Wood look even slyer and shiftier than before. A bargain's a bargain, she said. Swap houses first, and then we'll see. Dio was on to her like a shot. We'll see? That's not good enough. You get Bwgan-Babi home safe and well, and then we'll talk about swapping. The witch snarled. You watch your mouth, boyo, or something very nasty's likely to happen to you. I don't think you can magic iron, can you? Said Tatty suddenly. It's all a trick, isn't it? The witch hissed and spat and began to submerge beneath the oily black water. Curses on the whole lot of you. What do you want to come round here for, pestering a poor, helpless old woman without so much as a dry roof over her head? She can't, said Tatty, resigned. We'll have to think of something else. They sat on a branch overhanging the farm track and thought until their brains were curdling with the efforts. Oh, the elves would have to be away, of course, said Tatty glumly. Typical, said Dio in disgust. They're never around when you actually need them. We should have risked that axe, said Tatty. She'd never felt so helpless. All at once, they became aware of noises in the undergrowth close by. Somebody was approaching. Somebody crashing his way through the dry bracken and whistling an extremely complicated Irish slipjig with all the grace notes. The ferns parted and a little dancing figure came into view, hopping and stamping his feet to the rhythm of the tune. He was dressed all in green, and perched on top of his curly brown head was a green pointed hat. Tatty and Dio stared in utter disbelief. He was the last person in the world they'd expected to see just then. At the foot of their tree, the little man stopped. A brown, bearded face with rosy apple cheeks tilted upwards, and a pair of very bright blue eyes gazed up at them in twinkling astonishment. Well now, what's up with a pair of yous? Never a word of a welcome and faces on yous like a bad smell. Seamus, they yelled, and hurled themselves at him, nearly crushing him with hugs. That's enough now. Stop that, the leprechaun said, pretending to be cross. But he was pleased, really. He'd come over from Ireland for the weekend. There was this fella in a bar in Cork. My word, he was a big lad, a giant and no mistake. And off to London to seek his fortune that very day, so he was. So I thought to myself, I'll maybe go with him now and have a drink and a bit of a chat with me friends over the other side. Why not, I thought. I'll hitch a lift and himself none the wiser. Now, a pocket is a fine place to hitch a lift, but not when it has a hole in the bottom, which I became aware of when your man got up on his hind legs and I started sliding down inside his trousers. However, my downward progression was brought to a halt by the turn-up of his sock, and I stayed there as snug as a bug all the way over. You could say I came over by boot. The hardest thing about having a conversation with Seamus was to get him to stop talking and listen. Tatty and Dio did their best to get a word in edgeways, but it was impossible. Seamus, Tatty shrieked at last, shut up! And burst into tears. Once he understood the problem, Seamus became serious and thoughtful. Oh, a tin box, you say? And locks and bolts all over the place. Can you magic iron, Seamus? Dio begged. Seamus blew through his whiskers in a baffled sort of way and regretfully shook his head. I cannot. Gold and silver I can hold and hoard, but iron and tin and the works of man, never. There was a moment of dreadful, defeated silence. Isn't there anybody who can help us get Bwgan back? Dio asked miserably. Seamus scratched his beard and thought. Well now, he said at last, your best bet, as I see it, is to go straight to the court of the King of the West, where the great ones are, and get help from the high magic there. They stared at him with dawning hope. Is it far? Will it take us long to get there? Yes and no, said Seamus. Sure, it's a long, long way, but it takes no time at all. No time in this world, you understand. How do we get there? Dio said eagerly. Tatty was feeling nervous. Will you come with us, Seamus? The leprechaun shook his head. You'll have to climb the rainbow, sweet. Bwgan-Wood can do it. Leprechauns no. There's a wee bit of a weight problem, do you see? Tatty and Dio did see. Unlike them, Seamus was solid. But where do we find a rainbow at this time of night? Seamus thrust his hand into his pocket and pulled out his penny whistle. It looked just like an ordinary flageolet or penny whistle, but in fact it was made of pure gold. Easiest thing in the world, he boasted. One more thing though, you'll need a few gifts. It's the polite thing to do when you're visiting royalty, to take along a present or two. They gaped at him in dismay. But nothing we've got is good enough for a king, said Tatty. We've got Mammy's flowers made into garlands, Dio reminded her. And Nino's honey cakes, I suppose, said Tatty. Nobody bakes honey cakes like Nino. That'll be just grand, Seamus beamed. Now remember, watch your step when you get there. I've heard it's a chancy kind of a place. You'll need to keep your wits about you. They rushed to the Bwgan house to collect the garlands and the honey cakes and were back in record time. Seamus put his whistle to his lips. Ready? They nodded. Here we go then. And he began to play the tune that calls up the rainbow. I hope you enjoyed the next chapter of the book and look forward to sharing what happens next in another session after Easter. Keep up all the hard work you're doing at home. Keep safe, and I'll see you soon. Da bo chi.